Hey there, Patriots. This is True Outlaw Patriot coming at you with another one. The video clip that I'm putting together tonight, although late, okay, I had a long day at work, is some information that I came across late last night, and I figure I'd make a video on it today, okay? And after doing some more research, I found some other articles and some video that I think is very interesting for everyone to see. If you read the title to my video and the thumbnail, you read correct, okay? It seems that Gavin Newsome in California has passed a law, okay, prohibiting officials from asking anyone and requiring anyone to show ID when they vote, okay? What makes it even more interesting after doing research, and a lot of people probably know that there's about altogether 15 states that don't require someone to show ID, okay? I've been trying to Google the states, and I'm sure that I'm just not digging hard enough, but every time I Google it, nothing really pops up, okay? But like I said, I'm sure that I just have to do my due diligence into looking into it. But I'd be very surprised if any of those 15 states are a red state. And if they are, they need to check themselves and figure this out, okay? But I'm going to digress on those states. The reason why I'm focusing on California is because we all know that a lot of times when certain movements start to happen that are perpetrated by the left and cause problems, a lot of times they start out like in California, New York, Chicago, places like that, okay? And then it starts to spread like wildfire. Another reason why I'm focusing on California and what Gavin Newsom is doing is because California has a lot of people, and California basically has no borders, okay? So when you have a populace like California and it is basically controlled by the crooked left, rest assured that they will find ways to start helping illegal immigrants and illegal immigrant criminals get their citizenship in America, and by the time you know it, the country is flooded with more illegals that do not have an allegiance for America, but then they'll have a say-so on how America should be run. And that, not me trying to blow a dog whistle, but in fact, this is something that should bother, not scare everybody, because you need to stand up against this, so you can't be afraid to stand up against it. But it should definitely weigh heavy on everyone, every American, every patriot, and you really need to start digging into who else in the state that you're in are for laws like this, and if they're going to be able to have the power at some point to implement the same laws, okay? I've said it once, I'll say it again, many people are saying it, that the Democrats are trying to change the demographics of America, okay? And Gavin Newsom is one of the biggest snakes in that den of vipers that's trying to do it, okay? And the way they're trying to frame it, once again, they are using, okay, the poor communities, the black and Latino communities, saying that if officials require voter ID, it's going to disenfranchise poor communities, people of color, yada yada yada. Once again, using the race card, okay, and basically stepping on the backs of the poor just so they could get more of a voter base. Because in reality, the Democrats are playing a game that I'm not saying they're playing a game. The Democrats are doing something as if it's a game, okay? What they're not telling people is that with all this hype that's going on, okay, The Democrats, in all actuality, are losing major ground when it comes to having people on their side to vote for them. Okay, and I'll show a quick clip so everybody knows what I'm talking about, that that is coming from a state that supposedly should be all blue, but you won't see it on the regular, mainstream media, because they want everybody to think that the Democrats are the ones that are in power. The only ones that are in power, as far as the Democrats, are the corrupt ones, and they're trying to string along others to believe, basically, their psychotic agenda. Okay, it's sickening. But before we continue with all that, okay, like I said, I have a couple of articles and a couple of short videos that I'm going to show. But before I continue with that, I just want to thank all my new subscribers and all my subscribers on YouTube and on Rumble. So don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, pass the channel around. And if you can help support the channel, there's a link in my description to my Cash App and my merch store. And also, I'll be leaving a link to Loza Alexander's Gifts and Go campaign. If you guys can help him out by donating and or leaving him prayers and words of encouragement, it's all greatly appreciated. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to read this article first. Okay, now this came out 2 days ago by Newsweek, and it says Gavin Newsom bans California from requiring ID to vote. California Governor Gavin Newsom has signed a legislation that prevents local governments from requiring voters to present identification at the polls, a law aimed at curbing conservative efforts in cities like Huntington Beach. The new law is a response to Huntington Beach's controversial voter ID requirements, which was passed by the city's residents in March. Then it says, in April, California Attorney General Rob Bonta and Secretary of State Shirley Weber sued Huntington Beach to invalidate the law, arguing the local measure violated state voting protections. Now, when you see, this is what I'm always talking about, people, that all these little votes count. Not only do you have Gavin Newsom passing this law, okay, you have the Attorney General in California, major leftist, okay, the Secretary of State, major leftist, siding with Gavin Newsom, and this is where they're going to start the argument. It's by saying the local measure violated state voting protections. You know, the left always say, okay, that there is no voter fraud. But yet, when there's a Republican whipping their ass in the polls, right away, they'll come out and say that the polls are not right. The polls are not true. There's got to be something wrong. That's because they're cheating. Whatever excuse that you could think of that benefits them, that's what they're thinking of. Okay? Just like Hillary Clinton did back in 2016, that it was Russian bots operating out of Ukraine. Fast forward, we come to find out that actually Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and Obama and the rest of them, they're in cahoots with Russia and Ukraine. Okay? So this is the way the left use people, and then they start with number one, it's not facts, okay, and number two is fear tactics. Okay, I have yet to meet an American, okay, be it black, white, rich, poor, gay, straight, it doesn't matter, man, woman, that does not have ID. Okay, that the only time they had a hard time getting ID is if something major happened where they lost all their ID. If their wallet got stolen and all the original ID was in it, or they lost their wallet, they lost their social security card, everything that was in it. If there was a house fire, of course, they're going to have a little harder time trying to get it, but they will get it. But the left makes it seem that it's best for people not to have ID because it's hard for them to get ID. This is just their way of saying, you know what? If nobody has ID, then we could flood the country with whoever we want, because now you can't question them, and it's against the law now to question them for their ID. Okay? Be very aware to what's going on, people. But let's continue. It says the right to freely cast your vote is the foundation of our democracy. Again, we live in a constitutional republic, not a democracy. That's why people need voter ID, so they can vote to keep this constitutional republic working, not so it runs into a damn leftist democracy. But let's continue. And Huntington Beach's voter ID policy flies in the face of this principle. Bonta said in a statement when the lawsuit was filed. California is one of 14 states that do not require ID for elections, according to the National Conference of State Legislators. It says, sorry, let me make this up. Sorry, that was my bad. I hate when this does this. It says, authorized by the state Senator Dave Min, the legislation was passed by the California Assembly and Senate earlier this year. Min, a Democrat, here we go, running for Congress, people beware, introduced the bill so local governments cannot impose their own voter ID rules, which he said disproportionately affect low-income, elderly, and minority voters. You see how they're doing this? How does asking people for ID affect low-income people, elderly people, and minority voters? I want someone to make it make sense. I want one of you leftists that keep coming on my videos and leaving messages, even though when I respond, you don't respond back because you're a bunch of freaking cowards. But if you do read this, if you do watch this video, and you think you know why the answer to this is true, tell me, how does asking somebody if they have ID affect them, whether they're low income, elderly, or minority? What exactly does it do to affect their life if you're asking them for a valid ID? I'd like to know. But now when you got higher ups doing it, okay, you got all the, what I call the butterbrain people below that are going to listen to this and be like, you know what, that is true. How? You need ID to go to work. You need ID to do your taxes. You need ID to drive a car. You need ID to take books out the library. You need ID when you go into the hospital, when you're going to get operated. You need ID if you're going to get a tattoo. You need ID to buy alcohol. You need ID for everything except the one damn thing that Democrats don't want you to have ID for. And that's to vote. Because then it says, then they say, it's because it affects low-income, elderly, and minority voters. You know, if you lowered the age of drinking, then you have an argument to say that it affects low-income and minority voters, or minority people, I should say. Okay? Because now you're going to have a bunch of people that are going to be, you know, drunk all the time, or whatever the case is, and it's not even going to affect them. It's not even going to affect just minority classes or whatever the case is. It's going to affect anybody, okay, that is given permission under the age of 21 to go out there and drink, whether you're rich or poor, black or white, it doesn't matter. So even if you brought up that argument, or I'm bringing up the argument, that is thrown out the window, because we know that's not going to happen. Okay? But how does asking for ID, for a voter ID, affect low-income, elderly, and minority voters? It doesn't. These are the Democrats blowing a dog whistle and instilling fear in people. And again, the thing about this is that these three categories of people that he's trying to use to pander this bullshit to, I guarantee you that 99% of them have a valid ID and are American born. What he's talking about is, okay, are the illegals that won't have the ID. Because illegals could be low income, elderly, and in minority communities. You see how that works? But let's continue. We cannot have 100 different charter cities making up 100 different sets of voting rules based on fringe conspiracy theories, Min said in a statement to the Los Angeles Times. What fringe conspiracy theories? You know, it's just so damn infuriating the way these people on the left, okay, say and do things, and they put such a damn spin on it. They don't have split tongues anymore. Okay, you hear me say it all the time. They don't have split tongues. Okay, their tongues are so cut up. I mean, when they open their mouths, you would think that they had the head of 3 snakes. Okay, to come out and say we cannot have 100 different charter cities making up 100 different sets of voting rules based on fringe conspiracy theories. The fringe conspiracy theories that they're talking about is that a lot of people are complaining that illegals are voting. Illegals are being taken to register to vote. These are not conspiracies. These are facts, people. These are facts. But let's continue. Huntington Beach, led by a Republican city council, has defended its voter ID law, saying its status as a charter city gives it authority over local elections. The state's lawsuit challenged that position, arguing that state laws take precedence. Now, here's the thing. Huntington Beach wants to set up their own voting rules so like that they know that no illegals will come and try to change the demographics. Okay? Now, Gavin Newsome and the rest of them are saying, no, you can't do that. Okay? Number one, we don't require ID. And number two, you don't have the right to ask anybody, which means that, you know what? They are going to push as many illegals as they can into Huntington Beach and have them vote so they can start pushing out the conservative element. This is exactly what's going on. Okay? That's exactly what the hell they're trying to do. But let's continue. The right to freely cast your vote is the foundation of our democracy, and Huntington Beach's voters' ID policy flies in the face of this principle. Bonta said in an April statement about the lawsuit. California's Democratic lawmakers have introduced multiple bills aimed at closing loopholes in election laws, particularly to prevent conservative-leaning places like Shasta County from adopting voter ID or other restrictive measures. That's because they are trying to turn everything blue. They are trying to push out the Republican and the conservative vote. That's what they're trying to do. Okay? I mean, for that matter, if he says that no ID is required, so then, with that being said, then what's stopping every conservative Republican voter in California, every time a county has a vote, what is stopping them from going into that county and voting and flipping it red, every position that they got? Technically, nothing. Technically, nothing is stopping them, and I'll tell you why, for 2 reasons. One, no voter ID required, so you don't know who lives in the county. Okay? And 2, there's no way of finding out who's registered to vote, for the fact that since you're not requiring any ID, that means that you really won't have a legitimate tally of who is legal in the country, okay, and who has the right to vote where and when. See, the Democrats don't really think about stuff like this, okay? I've said it once, I'll say it again. They contradict themselves and they eat themselves. They pass laws that are spur of the moment, good feeling laws. They don't look at what the long-term consequences could be, and or how the laws that they pass can turn around and bite them in the ass. Okay? Because that's exactly what people in California now can pretty much do. You can't come out and start counting numbers in any of these counties, because by right, the law is stating that nobody has the right to ask anybody for an ID. So if you can't ask for an ID, you don't know where they live. And if you don't know where they live, you cannot go into the books to find out if they live in the county, because technically it goes back to square one, which is against the law to ask. Okay? Do you see how backwards this is? This is the Democrats' MO. They are wicked and evil the way they spin these things around, the way they make up these laws that affect people, because what they want is to flood whatever election with as many illegal votes as they can. Anybody on the left, on the right, or in the middle should want registered voters, Americans, no illegals, because if you keep saying that elections are rigged if a Republican wins, and a Republican says the election was rigged because a Democrat won, shouldn't both sides come together and say, you know what? So let's make this fair and square. Only if you're American born or you have American citizenship are you allowed with the proper ID to vote. And I'll give you the answer to that. People on the right will say yes. Maybe 10% on the left will say yes. 90% on the left will say no. Because all they want to do is steal every damn and win every damn election that they can. And that goes on every level in society. But let's continue. The legislative push comes in response to broader national debates over voter fraud, which intensified after the 2020 presidential election. Efforts to impose voter ID requirements or eliminate electronic voting machines, such as those attempted in Shasta County, are part of a movement spurred by baseless claims, here we go, of election fraud made by former President Donald Trump and his supporters. Min's bill is part of a larger strategy to endure consistent voting rights protections across California. Other recently passed legislation includes measures to increase the Secretary of State's control over voting systems and ensure election data security. Yeah, like wasn't it the Secretary of State Katie Hobbs in Arizona that was in charge of the election? It was one of the longest counting of the ballots in like U.S. history, and just to find out that she won, but yet supposedly there was people complaining about how in certain areas in Arizona that were voting Republican, machines kept breaking down, people's ballots were not working, people were being turned away, and she just ironically won, and she was in charge, okay, of counting the votes. So now these people in this article want us to believe that the people in charge in California that are doing this, that are all Democrats and leftists, that they're on the up and up. And what they're saying are facts, okay? That what Republicans and conservatives want is going to be a hindrance to low-income, elderly, and minorities. But yet you're basically shutting everybody else out by saying that, no, we want free and fair elections. How can they be free and fair if nobody knows if it's actual born Americans or people with citizenship that have the right to vote? I tell you, people, these people are evil. Okay, despite ongoing legal battles, Huntington Beach officials have yet to formally respond to the state's lawsuit. Okay, so I'm going to leave that at that because there's a lot more to get into. Okay, that was the first article. It's funny how we're not seeing a lot of this on the news, on mainstream media, but I was coming across, and what sparked it last night was coming across Maya Tusi's channel, and he put the video out, okay? And this man's all the way in Europe, you know? And what kills me is that you're not even hearing it on the mainstream media, even on the conservative side. And it's something that should be put on blast, especially since we have a presidential election coming up. Okay, so we're going to get to the next video, but before we do, on my community board, I have put a poll that if California is going to pass this law, that if California should not be counted in the next presidential election. And so far, I've gotten, I don't know, like maybe 40 votes. Everybody said yes, 100%. Okay? Now, if you think about it, I think it's something that should be in every state, especially from the video I put out last night that Michigan does not want to purge their voter polls, knowing that there are over 200,000 illegal votes or questionable registrations, I should say. Okay? And even with that proof, they still don't want to purge their voter rolls. So my question is this. Should any of these states that act like this or pass laws like this, should they be allowed, okay, to have their votes cast for a president? My answer to that is no. You don't want to clean up the voter rolls and make it legit? You don't want to pass voter ID laws to American citizens and make it legit? Then you know what? Your damn state's votes should not count. Plain and simple. But let's get to the video. Here we go. Now, before I play the video, I just want to make one thing clear. I stand by what I said about states not having their votes counted, but what I should have said was that this is not a knock on the conservatives and the Republicans, okay, or even Democrats for that matter that are against what Gavin Newsom is doing. What I'm trying to say is that, you know what, if there's going to be tyrants like Gavin Newsom, okay, doing things like this, or whoever it is that's in charge of Michigan, whatever, then you know what, your constituents, the people that live in that state, you should bear the brunt of their criticism. That a law should be passed by saying that, you know what, if you're not going to make it legit, then it's going to be your fault that the voters in your state, their votes will not be heard or counted because of your draconian ways, because of your communist and socialist ways of trying to rig elections. So then you should bear the brunt of the people in your state, okay? And in my opinion, they should come at you hard. They need to protest and get you booted out, impeached, whatever the hell the case is, and even if they can get you imprisoned, get you imprisoned. That's the way I feel about it. I'm just trying to put some clarity on that. But this is the video that Maya Tusi put out. Check this out.
The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, has officially lost his mind. Ladies and gentlemen, California has fallen. The liberals and the US Democrats continue to make life harder in California. And of course now, Gavin is going to help illegal migrants to vote in elections, despite existing laws to get people to simply show their vote ID before they vote. Because especially in America, especially with the fact that you have a lot of people who are, as the liberals would say, undocumented, but basically they're illegal migrants. Exactly. And they can go around, pretend to be somebody else and vote. And that's why the Democrats win in certain states. But the interesting thing about this, it goes against everything they've had. So in March this year, 50...
Now check this out. This is where the federal government needs to step in. Okay? Because I told you guys on my last video and the video before that when they wanted to have the recall to kick Gavin Newsom out, he basically told everybody, piss off, I'm staying. Okay? And it was because that night when they were counting the votes, they only counted about 39%. They were just beginning to count, and they had already called it for him. Okay? Without even finishing, even getting to midway of the counting, they already deemed that was enough for him to win. It's like 39% does not, especially for all of California. Okay? But now they have other people that are voting against this, and now listen to these stats, and he is still passing laws, so much that the Democrats and Gavin Newsom and everybody says that they are for the people. Listen to this information right here.
This year, 53.4% of residents voted to adopt a ballot measure that requires all residents who want to cast a ballot to show an ID.
Okay. Now, 53.4% is majority. More than half of California is for voter ID. How in the hell does Gavin Newsom come and pass a law when nearly 54% of the population in California is telling him we don't want that law? Who are the dictators now? Huh? Who are the draconian overlords? This is incredible, but let's continue.
That's what people wanted. But Gavin Newsom has now gone against it. So he's now signed a bill into law that bans local governments from enacting laws to require residents to show a valid form of identification in order to vote. Now, there is going to be no outrage from the federal government on this in terms of the White House and using any sort of power.
Of course not.
Or at least have a conversation. You know, the president could still have a conversation.
And in my opinion, they're right. In my opinion, the Congress and the White House should be in an uproar over this, number one. And the Supreme Court should step into this, in my opinion. And I know what people are going to say, but this is a state law. Okay? This has to do with the state. Yes, it does. But like I said before, people, it's the small votes, okay, that lead up to the White House. When you have people making laws like this, all you need to do is start voting in all the wrong people, and they make their way into Congress, into the White House. And this is why I don't understand. Well, I should understand, because obviously look at the regime that's in power. But what I can't understand is, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe they will step in, is why hasn't the Supreme Court said anything about this? When you have I believe that California has like the most when it comes to population in the United States as far as a state. Okay, you are talking about a state that can literally flip a presidential election, just that one state alone, if they let tens of thousands of illegals vote illegally. I'm not getting this, but let's continue.
Conversation with the governor, because of course the White House is also controlled by the US Democrats. They're also not in favor of ID. Now, Elon Musk responded saying, wow, it is now illegal to require voter ID in California. They just made preventing voter fraud against the law.
Yeah.
The Joker is in charge. That is a key point, by the way.
It's true.
It's not necessarily, for example,
preventing voter fraud
in the
now is against the law.
UK, we got the Labour Party campaigning against. Well, it's too late now because it's now already law. You have to show your voter ID, your photo ID before you vote. But the Labour Party campaigned against it, saying, no, but because we have a lot of migrant families, they're nice families, and they want to vote, right? If they are not illegal, they will have some sort of ID. You can get a free ID. It takes about 5 minutes from a website, a government website. It's not difficult, even if you don't have a passport or a driver's license. But the Labour Party obviously lost that battle, and that's it. In America, not only to continue the fight, Gavin Newsome decided to make a law, to make the existing law a ban.
Yeah.
Now that says a lot about the mentality of those who continue to elect nutters and clowns in states like California.
Absolutely. You know, I'm gonna leave a link to this video in the description, but it's insane the way this man and the way the left are using, once again, I'm gonna keep saying it, low income, elderly, and minority voters. You people should be ashamed that you're still voting for Democrats if they're gonna keep using you like this. Okay? And in all fairness, the minorities that I think they're talking about, and I'm almost certain that they're talking about, that they're using what they consider the minorities of America. If you're American born, black, white, indigenous, like they say, and I keep saying leave us out of this, but they're using you, okay, just so they can take the illegals to vote them in. How you are okay with this, all you people on the left, how are you okay with this is beyond me. You must be gluttons to slavery, to abuse, okay, to ridicule. I mean, I know that ignorance is bliss, but do you not have any damn pride to look at these leftist officials and say, don't use me like this? It's sickening. But then I came across another video that I found very interesting, but I'll play that in a second. I'm going to read another article. Here we go. Okay, now this one came out yesterday, as a matter of fact. It says, California mayor defies Newsome's ban on voter ID laws. That law does not apply to us. Okay? A California mayor is defiant after Governor Gavin Newsom signed a law in direct response to the city's attempt to secure elections. The saga began on March 5th when Huntington Beach voters weighed in and passed Ballot Measure 1, the Voter ID and Election Rules Amendment. According to Ballotpedia, the charter amendment authorized the city to require voter identification for elections and allowed infrastructure to support the initiative. In 2023, then Mayor Tony Strickland supported the measure in the face of pressure from local and state Democrats seeking to torpedo it. Our democracy does not work if people do not have faith in the election results, Strickland told Voice of OC. Anytime you can put safeguards in, I think it's important to do so people have faith in our election outcomes. I agree. Huntington Beach voters passed the measure with 53.4% approving the measure and 46.6% rejecting it. The increased election security was set to begin in 2026. So not only did they pass this law here that's supposed to start in 2026, Gavin Newsom is passing a law to defy that, and his law goes into effect January 1st of 2025. I'm telling you, this dude is a snake. After the initiative passed state legislation, state legislators were quick to react to Huntington Beach voters' approval of the measure and moved to crush it entirely. In April, California's Attorney General Rob Bonta, another leftist traitor to the country, and Secretary of State Shirley Weber, another traitorous leftist, sued the city over what is called an unlawful voter ID amendment. The two officials said without evidence that the measure would hurt the poor, elderly, and people of color. Okay, now you heard the last article how they worded everything, actually going for Gavin Newsom and trying to say that whoever is putting out this information, they have no proof. Now this was put out by the Western Journal, okay, and it's I'll read it again, right down here. I just read it. Okay. In April, California's Attorney General Rob Bonta and Secretary of State Shirley Weber sued the city over what he called an unlawful voter ID amendment. The two officials said, without evidence, that the measure would hurt the poor, elderly, and people of color. You see, they're saying that that's what's going to hurt these demographics, but now this article is saying that they're saying that without evidence, which is true. Like I said, there is no evidence that having an official ID or a voter ID can in any way, shape, or form hurt poor people, elderly people, and people of color. Okay, because how in the world is that going to hurt them? Because then you have to really think outside the box and pull this, you got to pull this fabric really thin by saying, you know what, okay, if you think this is going to hurt poor people, the elderly, and people of color, take the people of color out the equation. You have poor people who come in every color and race, and you have elderly that come in every color and race. How, if some of them are going to be white, and you're going to claim that only they could get ID, then how by getting voter ID does that hurt them? Never mind the people of color, let's take that out the equation. But how does it hurt the other two demographics? Because poor people come in all races, all genders, if you want to say, man and woman, gay, straight, black, white, rich, poor, whatever the case is. Poor people come in all genders. The same thing when it comes to the elderly. They come in whatever it is you want, you want to say, whatever race, whatever color, religion. If you're elderly, you're elderly. If you're poor, you're poor. How does having a valid ID hurt them? It doesn't. You want to make the argument that it hurts people of color, the minorities? You still can't prove that either. It's bullshit. But let's continue. After the vote, California State Senator Dave Min introduced legislation that would bar local governments from implementing their own voter requirements. After introducing his bill, Min dismissed citizens' attempts to secure their local elections, saying, "We can't have local jurisdictions implementing their own voter requirements." How? How is it that you cannot do that? Again, I'll go to my argument that if you're not going to do that, that means anybody could come from any county after voting, go into another county that is winning by, let's say, 1,000 votes. For the conservatives, they can go and send people, 10,000 people, to go and flip it and put a Democrat in their place. This is wrong on so many damn levels. But let's continue. Governor Newsom signed the bill into law Sunday, according to Politico. The new law will take effect on January 1st, 2025. Unfortunately for Newsom and company, current Huntington Beach Mayor Gracie Vandermark isn't about to quietly let Sacramento dictate the future of her city. She questions whether the state even has jurisdiction over charter cities like Huntington Beach and the constitutionality of Min's legislation. The state cannot pass any laws that strip us of our constitutional rights, Vandermark told LAist, I guess. So that law does not apply to us or affect our new election laws. Okay? Judging by the law Newsome just signed and Vandermark's refuses to back down, the city and state are likely headed for a heated court battle. Although neither of these initiatives will come into effect before the impending 2024 election, the vote, now just weeks away, will likely be marked by similar conflicts over election integrity across the country. And this is why I keep telling people that you have to pay attention. If there's something you see, it doesn't feel right, if you feel compelled to report it, go and report it to the proper authorities when it comes to elections. That's it, plain and simple. If you're wrong, you're wrong. I don't know if there's a penalty for that, but anybody with common sense that will look into it will have to say, you know what? There is no law. In other words, you didn't make a false claim. You were just doing your due diligence by pointing something out that you thought could have been nefarious. And in my opinion, that should be okay. Okay? That should be okay. But the next video I want to show you, so we'll end the video. It's a short video. The Democrats keep pushing and saying that Kamala Harris is up by this many points and that many points, or whatever the case is, in swing states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, you name it. And I found out this video, like I said, is not on the mainstream media, but it shows that Pennsylvania, in my opinion, when they had that midterm election where what's his name, the governor or the senator wind up winning, okay? I always forget his name, but everybody knows who it is. He caught a stroke or something like that. Something tells me that Pennsylvania should have been flipped entirely red at least 2 years ago. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here we go. Okay, people, I'm going to play this video. This was put up by Newsweek, and the article itself, I mean, it's just mind-blowing. This came out September 9th, okay? It's only a 51-second video, but there's some extra stuff that I want to point out real quick. It's a lot, but I'm not going to play it all. I'm just going to do this for sake of time. Check this out. Here we go. It says voter registration among Republicans is 4 times higher than it is among Democrats in Pennsylvania, according to new data. Okay? Decision Desk data shows that GOP voter registration surged in July, with more than 21,000 Republicans signing up to vote. Okay? Check that, and that's not the good part of it. In contrast, only 5,000 Democrats registered to vote in July of 2024. This is the part that got me. The data also shows that since November of 2020, the number of Democrats registered to vote in the state has decreased by more than 320,000. How is that possible? It's either one of 2 things, one of 3 things. 1, they switched parties. 2, they moved out. Or 3, which is probably something that a lot of people were thinking about, but they didn't want to say it. And that 3rd one is they never existed. Let's continue. Meanwhile, the number of Republicans registered to vote has also dropped, but by a much smaller margin, with 1,400 fewer voters since 2020. Now, if it's true that 320,000 Democrats, okay, that it has dropped, and that means that maybe if half of them switched parties and became Republican, when was it that Fetterman got voted in for Pennsylvania? I believe it was 2022, if I'm correct, right? Or somewhere about that. Remember when the whole red wave was supposed to happen? So how did the Democrats win? If they had less voters starting from 2020. 320,000 less voters starting in 2020. Think about that, people. Pennsylvania is among the 30 states, including the swing states of North Carolina, Nevada, and Arizona, which register voters by requiring a political party designation. Decision Desk HQ data shows a discrepancy in the drop in registered voters between the parties, with the Democrats losing 3.5 million registered voters nationally, while the Republicans have gained 141,000 registered voters. I don't know, people. I don't know. Despite the discrepancy in registered voters between the parties, Democrats are starting to pick up in terms of voter registration after Biden. Okay, but here's the thing. If you remember the video that I put out, there are a lot of illegals and or a lot of discrepancies of people registering to vote that they don't match, and it's in the tens of thousands. So it's funny how since 2020, 320,000 less registered Democrat voters from Pennsylvania, okay, that has happened, but under Biden, the Democrats are starting to pick up in the terms of voter registration. But from who exactly? Is it new Democrat voters, American Democrat voters, or illegals? Let me go back a little bit because I should have read right through that. Where am I? Right here. Oh, sorry. Despite the discrepancy in registered voters between the parties, Democrats are starting to pick up in terms of voter registration after Biden ended his re-election campaign. According to Decision Desk HQ, meaning Democrats may see a surge in voter registration nationally in August. I'm not buying it. Okay? I'm not saying that they're lying about this information they're putting out. I just think they're being too complacent right here by saying Democrats may see a surge in voter registration nationally in August. Okay? But this was put out in, I'll look at it right here. This was put out September 9th. So maybe this video was put out before August. Okay, fine. And whatever, people, take it with a grain of salt of how this was all put together. But the timelines don't match, in other words. But that's besides the point. If Pennsylvania has seen a drop of over 320,000 registered Democrat voters since 2020, there's been a surge of Republican voters, and not by much, but the decline of Republican voters is only 1,400. But now they're saying that after Biden decided not to, after he ended his re-election campaign, that the votes for Democrats are going up. That could only mean one thing. If the Democrats are losing voters across the board, how in the world are they replenishing their votes so rapidly? Illegals. That's basically what it is. At least that's what I believe. But I was going to read throughout all this, but it's a long article and there's different sectors. I just want to show you a couple of things that, while reading it, that popped up. Okay? And it talks about regulations and stuff like that. But one thing caught my eye, a couple of things, which was the map right here. Okay, all the dark purple, it says these are the states that require photo ID. Photo ID is required. Okay, the blue or deep purple, the light violet, if you want to call it, are non-photo ID required. Okay, no ID required. Look at all the states where no ID is required. What are they? Democrat states. And yet the Democrats want people to believe that they believe in fair elections. But yet no ID is required. All the way, what's this? Oregon, Seattle, Washington State, California, New York, New Hampshire. I mean, what's this? No ID required in Minnesota, in Chicago, Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, Maine, New Jersey, Maryland, New Mexico, California, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington. And what's down here? This is a part of Hawaii. Okay. So all these blue states are telling people you don't need ID. So how are we supposed to know exactly how many people they have registered to vote? How are we supposed to believe that they are winning these states if they don't let people register legally to vote? And I'll tell you, it's because they are stealing elections. And that's what they want to keep doing. Okay? And people wonder why so many people from the Democrat side are leaving. But even with them leaving, you just seen in the video that since Biden said he's not going to go, go again for his second term, that they see their votes are going up. But who has flooded the country since 2020? Illegals. Okay, that was one thing I seen right here. The second thing that I seen, there was a few articles. I'm just going to read like the headlines from them. It says swing state faces a daunting election after. Not this one. Sorry about that. Right here, Harris to double. No wait. I'm sorry, people. Bear with me. Where did I see it? It has something to do. Unless it was a different article, I apologize. It just might be that, but it had something to do with swing states having a problem with Democrats that are in charge that are basically trying to help immigrants get their driver's license, trying to push for them to get citizenship, and they're pushing it in mass, and that's because they know that they're losing in the swing states, okay, to the Republicans. They're losing people from their party, and they're trying to push so that illegals can be able to vote. I'm telling you, this whole thing is just twisted, and it's wicked, and it's just wrong. It's unconstitutional. It's anti-American. They're a bunch of treasonous traitors to this country if they think that what they're doing is in the name of democracy. If they think that what they're doing is them saying that we are standing on the right side of history. No, you're not. You're trying to destroy this country, and you're trying to rule it by hook or by crook. That's exactly what the Democrats are doing. From California to Washington, Oregon, New York, Pennsylvania, all over the place. And the reason why I said, and I don't know if I mentioned it or I'm repeating myself, that Pennsylvania, in my opinion, should have been red 2 years ago, is because of those 320,000 votes. Okay? Or registered voters that all of a sudden are nowhere to be found. So that they all leave the state, possibility. That they all switch parties, possibility. Or is it possible that it never existed? They never existed. Which means that, you know what? I have a funny feeling, okay, and this is just me, this is my opinion, that Pennsylvania was actually winning, and they had to push Fetterman in because they knew if they lost Pennsylvania, it wasn't going to be the catalyst for that red wave, but it was definitely going to be a stronghold where Democrats, no matter what up until this point, they will have no say-so in the next presidential election. Because I said it in my other videos, they needed to win two key states in my opinion, Pennsylvania and Arizona. So if you think about it, yes, there was a red wave, but Arizona got stolen and Pennsylvania got stolen. That's just the way I see it. Okay? This is just me putting two and two together, and if you ask me, there's a lot more information out there that now is coming to light, and I think it's something that should be brought up in Congress, but I'm going to hold my breath on that one as long as I can. We'll see. But anyway, that's what I got for you. Don't forget to comment, like, share, subscribe, pass the channel around. If you can help support the channel, there's a link in my description to my Cash App and my merch store. If it's your first time and you like the content, please join the channel. Go to the community board, vote on the poll that I put out about California, if their vote should be counted, if they don't want voter ID in their state. And also leaving the link in the description to Maya Tusi's channel and to Loza Alexander's Gifts and Go campaign. If there's any way you can help out, and also leave words of encouragement and prayer, it'd be greatly appreciated. So remember, people, stay vigilant, keep praying for each other, keep praying for the women and the children, pray for this country, pray for your enemies, pray for Donald Trump, and don't forget to get out there and vote. Peace.